Hi, it's Carol Fitzgerald with our latest Book Reporter Talks To interview with my guest, Rebecca Serle, which I am so excited about talking to today. Two of her books, In 5 Years and The Dinner List, are both Book Reporter Bets on Selections. And I have just thoroughly enjoyed these books. This one was a one-sit read, and I just sat down and completely enjoyed it. So welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I know, this is going to be so much fun because what I'm going to first have you do is, how about you start about telling us the plot of In 5 Years, because I don't want to do it because I'm not giving any spoilers away, and I'm afraid I will.
Okay, I have my elevator pitch.
Go.
So In 5 Years is a story about Danny Cohen, who is a woman, a corporate lawyer living in New York City, who thinks she knows exactly what she wants for her life. She has a very airtight 5-year plan. And she gets to live 1 hour, 5 years in the future, and she wakes up in an apartment she's never been before with a man she's never met before. And her future looks nothing like the life that she is currently planning. Wakes back up in her normal life, 4.5 years go by, and then she meets the man who was in that hour with her. And everything sort of starts to ravel together, both ravel together and unravel.
Unravel. It does both. It absolutely does both. I heard you talk about this book back in October, and I was like, what an interesting premise. What a setup. And as soon as I heard it, it's like, okay, I've got to find out what happens in this book. So let's start by thinking about Danny with her perfect planned life. I love the way Danny knew exactly the way things were unfold. So talk to us about her.
Well, I knew in order for the conceit to work that I would have to have a protagonist who was very uptight, for lack of a better way to say it, when we meet her, in order to arc her where she would need to go. Because her journey over the course of the book is really to understand that, we can't always control what happens to us. But, what I like to say is we can't always control what happens, but we control how we react to what happens. So that's kind of her course over the course of this book. But I knew when she started, she had to be very far on this side.
Right.
And I definitely have quite a bit of Danny in me.
I was going to say, was any of you inspired by Danny? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely 100%. And probably only wrote this book because life has turned out so differently than I thought it would.
Exactly.
So it's interesting. I think if my life had gone according to plan, In 5 Years probably wouldn't exist.
And we're going to talk about that later on too, because I just think it's so much fun because I was reading all your background and I was like, wait, this was not the projection that you were on at that point.
No.
I wanted to tell Danny that plans are made to be broken.
Yeah.
And I think that when you're saying this is the way it's going to be, it's a very 20-something thing. This is the way it's going to be. This is the way it's all going to work out. And nothing is going to change and nothing's going to deviate. And I think you did such a good job of setting up this character who has it all just completely figured out. And it does really, she is not thinking anything is going to happen that's different.
No, nothing. She's not accounting for life.
She's not accounting for anything getting in the way. I love the way she keeps postponing her wedding plans. Like it's something that just can be moved on the calendar.
Yes.
Like, this is this. And it's like she's forgetting to get married.
Yeah.
So this woman who has this plan in life of getting engaged, she never gets to the getting married part. She's only at getting engaged.
Right. Well, so, this man from this future hour comes into her life, as we say, and as we said, and her plan begins to veer a little bit off course. And she sort of won't admit it to herself, but the one piece of her plan that isn't falling into place is the fact that she is not getting married. Right. She refuses to sort of commit to this. So it's the first thing that kind of takes her off of the very lined path that she has been marching along on.
And it's also, she's obsessed with working. I mean, working ridiculous hours at the law firm, working, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a junior associate. This is exactly what's going to happen. And then all of a sudden she starts to realize that work isn't everything. Like she starts missing meetings, going in late. And that's where I see that there's this very subtle, that this very perfect plan is also getting unraveled too.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because it was very important to me that the only thing that really remains of Danny's plan at the end of the book is that she is, in fact, she's still a lawyer and she still has her job. And I think that we have been given a lot of narratives as women with these sort of magical stories that it's work or love. You can't have both. And in order to understand that you can have love, you have to sort of give up work or understand that you can't be this super type A. And yes, the circumstances of the book, I won't give anything away, require her to sort of take a little bit of a step back from that and evaluate her life a little bit more holistically. But she is still extremely driven at the end of this novel, and she still has her professional ambitions, and that was important for me to clarify because I feel like I feel like we can have both.
I agree with you completely on that. And I did like where she ended up with her career. But I also like that she realized that a couple of moments, like, I'm missing all these meetings. My phone is blowing up. But being in this other situation is very important to me right now. And I think that at the beginning of the book, she wouldn't have been thinking about that. That wouldn't have been something that would have been important. It's only going to the meeting to make that next step. And then realizing life has to be a little bit human.
Yeah, well, life is this, not this.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I like that. Okay.
So yes, we have to prioritize what needs to be prioritized in the moment that it has to be prioritized.
Right. And it's like, is this the thing to do? Is this the thing to do, or what is the thing to do? I would say that this book took a lot of plotting. Am I right?
It's interesting because, so I sort of subscribe to Stephen King's philosophy that books aren't built, they're uncovered. Like, they're not sort of houses, they're statues where we just have to get rid of the clay that's excess in order to reveal what already exists. And I feel like I write books that way. I write them very quickly. So I'm not a huge planner. I had an idea of where this had to go. But I think if you just sort of align with your book and get in the zone, like, magical things begin to happen in the writing process.
And you can see, because there were all these little moments where there were surprises to the readers, and I feel like they maybe were surprises to you as well.
Yeah, I mean, I like to say that the most fun and the best part about reading is when it feels like writing. Mm-hmm. And it only happens a few times over the course of a book if you're lucky. But this book definitely felt, there were more than there were at moments that felt like reading, where I was like, what is going to happen next? How is this all going to tie together? Why does this need to happen now?
Right.
It's interesting.
Yeah, and the characters are so strong as well, because it's such a character-driven story.
Yeah.
There is place, but there's a lot of character. And even people that drop in for a while, like her boss, or like just people that come along the way that they meet up with, they're very important to pushing the story forward. They having just a couple of lines. They can move the whole thing forward too as well. So do you write kind of stream of consciousness then as you're sitting down writing?
So my process is usually that I will have an idea, and it usually comes as a conceit. Like with the dinner list, it was, if you could have dinner with any 5 people, living or dead, who would they be? And I thought, okay, who best to tell this story? Mm-hmm. And same thing within 5 years. It was like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Okay, who best to tell this story? Mm-hmm. And then I basically free write for about 30 pages and just kind of see what comes. And then I'll stop down and do like a vague outline, which is really just a series of plot points that I think I have to hit and where I'm eventually trying to get to. And then I just write, and the book usually will fill itself in.
Yeah, and you could. I would love to sit there and deconstruct it with you at one point and sit there and go, okay, where was this? When did this idea come up, or whatever? Because I just find it's really interesting. So Danny's a super planner. I take it you are as well.
I used to be.
You used to be. You were
I
there
think
for a
I'm
while.
less so now than I used to be.
And so, did your life plan evolve the way? So let's get into that. The way you planned.
Oh,
you were
no.
A YA writer.
I was a YA writer, and you know, then I moved into television. I had a television show I created called Famous in Love that was based off of my book series that I was involved in we did 2 seasons of it, and never thought that I would work in TV. That happened.
It was just totally different because you're working by committee
instead
of just you.
Yes.
You know?
It was a very, very different experience. And I sort of stepped away from publishing for about 4 years, went to LA, came back, wrote the dinner list. And now I have this career in adult where it's really where I belong. It's where I'm so happy to make my home. But I moved to Los Angeles. I thought I was going to like live and die as a New Yorker. I left this year. So a lot of things in my life have been deeply unplanned.
Deeply unplanned.
Yeah,
deeply
unplanned.
Was writing for television, did you enjoy it? Well, because you're writing with a team. You're not writing with a group. Was it fun?
It was both very fun and a very challenging experience. I think that it was very difficult for me to give up something that had been exclusively mine. You know, writing novels is such a solitary endeavor, and writing television is such a collaborative endeavor. And I think I wasn't fully prepared for the ways in which I had to just like open up my heart and my work. So it was interesting. But I just wrote a pilot off of Megan McCafferty's Jessica Darling series that I loved.
Oh, that's wonderful.
As a young person myself, and I know many readers do. So we're hoping to move forward with that. So I really love television. I hope to continue there. But books, I think, are my first.
Your first career.
They're my first love. And there's something about writing novels that there's a certain like creative fulfillment that just doesn't come in the same way from television.
Yeah, I remember when Megan Abbott was working on the show on HBO, The Deuce, and she was writing with a group.
Right.
And one of the authors said to her, when you go back home, remember now, it's just you in the room.
Yeah.
It's not anybody else sharing ideas with you. It's just you in the room.
Yes.
And I just saw an article on the end of Dare Me, and there were actually 2 different endings to her series. And they basically sat in a room and said, which one are we going to pick? Well, when you're here, you're basically picking, working with an editor or whatever, but you're basically picking what the ending's going to be. There, you're trying to figure out what kind of emotion it's going to be with the audience, where you're going to be able to drive forward from. It's just very, very different experience.
It's very complicated, and also with books, it's just story. You have no physical limitations.
Right.
And with television, you have budgets, you have locations, you have character schedules, like actors when they're available. So there's a lot of constraints on the story you can tell. You can't just write the purest version. You have to write the version that's going to translate.
Right.
And that in and of itself is just a complete mental shift from publishing.
Well, I know years ago, when I was working on a magazine, we shot documentaries.
Yeah.
And there were times where they would be on the other scene, and I said, if they don't get here soon, it's going to be dark.
Right.
Like, we have to move
Right.
the shoot
Yes.
along.
Yes.
And we can't wait for the right light anymore.
Absolutely.
Because we have no more time.
Yes.
And we can't do this tomorrow.
Yes.
And we can't just put everybody in the same clothes. And it's just a completely different experience than
completely
being able to
different
say, oh, she's going to be in the blue shirt again tomorrow. It's not a big deal.
And I think it's probably made me less precious about my writing process, which is, at the end of the day is
It's a
great.
good
Like,
thing.
I'll write anywhere. It doesn't matter. The work has to get done.
Right.
In television, the work has to get done, the end. None of the circumstances matter. So I think that I brought that sort of like drive and no nonsense back to my publishing life. And yeah, like
If somebody's not on set that day, we still need to do. So what are we going to shoot? We'll shoot something
Right,
else.
like,
We'll
keep
shoot
it
around
moving.
them. We'll just keep moving.
Like writer's block, maybe not so much. Keep it moving.
Exactly.
Right.
It's like, yeah, you can. If one of my friends said about writer's block, he says, teachers are not allowed to have teacher's block.
No.
She's painter.
Right.
Like, if the painter coming to your house can't have, I'm on block today. I
Yes.
can't come paint the
No,
walls.
this is
Plumber
my
can't do
job.
that. This is your job.
Right.
Just sit down and do your
Yes.
job. This is what you do. In both books, you write about female friendship and friendships that endure the test of time. Trials along the way, but they endure the test of time. So here we've got between Danny and Bella, and here Dinner List between Sabrina and Jessica. So what resonates with you about female friendship?
So the friendship in the Dinner List between Sabrina and Jessica is based off of one of the closest friendships in my life, and just sort of the challenges of having gone through all of the early steps together, you know, been roommates in college, and then in your early years as 20-somethings, and then when women's lives diverge, right? Some women get engaged and get married. Some women don't. Some women have babies. Like, life begins to look very different for different people, and sort of the ways in which we still choose to come back together with each other and choose to like acknowledge and recognize each other's paths, even though they may not look the same as ours.
Right.
And the complexities and difficulties of that in the era of your 20s and early 30s. As a woman. So that's really what the Dinner List is. And I'm so glad you recognize that, because I think the relationship between Sabrina and Jessica in the Dinner List is probably the most important relationship in that book.
Yeah, it is.
And in 5 years is about Danny and Bella, who've been best friends since they were children. So it goes even further back. And they are extremely different people. They might be like opposite people. And and the ways in which they're still sort of honoring each other's lives and trying to fit into them. And also with them, there's a particular dynamic that's existed for such a long time, because they were friends during such a pivotal stage of life, like when they were kids, and they've grown together. And so they have a lot of paradigms that like maybe perhaps aren't serving them anymore because they are these adults. But the women in my life are just like tantamount to my happiness and my, so they're everything.
And it's also interesting because Bella's parents are sort of absent. They're more than absent. And as a result, Danny is more a parent figure to her at so many times during this book. It's like a sister and a parent at the same time, because she's not just being a friend, she's being a protector of her as well.
Yes.
And she's helping make decisions, big pivotal decisions of what's going on. And to know that there's one point where she's the phone call, and you're just there like, wow, that's a pretty impressive thing, because the parents are on the scene and you're the call, you know?
Absolutely. And that's how it's like, that's sort of what I was referring to. Like, that's how it's been since they were 10 years old. Danny's just been that person for Bella.
And it's so interesting to have people that are that different, because you go through a point where a lot of your friends are the same. They have to be the same as you. And those friendships that survive where people are so different are so unique, because that usually doesn't happen. Usually if you're different, it's like, oh, well, you know, she's just not, she doesn't have a career together. She She doesn't have her act together. So the bond between them was so much different than who the people they are. It was something completely different as who they wanted to be with each other.
Yes. And I think you do, to your point, I think you do have to keep choosing each other like you do in a romantic relationship or in a marriage with friendships. Because yes, life looks very different and you become different people. And I think making that choice to stay connected is important, like it is in any other relationship.
Yeah, it's like, and we're going to choose to spend time with each other. We're going to choose to do this.
Yeah.
And even when the person is doing the craziest things, you're still okay with it because that's who they are.
That's who they are.
The alter ego friend fun, In both books, you have women at the crossroads in their lives. So did turning 30 for you inspire a lot of that?
Yeah, it did.
I'm still 27. I'm waiting to hear. So I'm looking at your experience.
It's good on the other end, I can assure you. Yes, my 30s have been the best. Yes, I wrote the dinner list like right on the cusp of that marker. And I think I think looking back, it means a lot less than I thought it did. But there is a certain sort of like moving out of a very extended childhood that happens, I think, at the end of our 20s, where we're sort of more solidly rooted in life.
Right.
And the choices that we're making seem to maybe hold a little bit more significance, although that too could be a fallacy because life is ever evolving and ever changing. But I think there's just a little bit more of a severity is not the right word because it sounds negative, but like it's sort of a taking stock of your life.
There was a book that came out a couple of years ago. It's a nonfiction book about your 20s and how the 20s influence what happens going forward. And it was a really interesting book. We had a website called 20 Something Reads at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting and looking at this book because it was some of the decisions you make in your 20s are going to influence the entire rest of your life. And I thought, whoa, that is completely heavy of what goes on. Because I think that it's changed. And I think that the 30s can be a more pivotal point for people making changes now.
Oh, absolutely.
Whereas before it was, if you don't do this, this won't happen, that won't happen. And I'm like,
I don't subscribe to that.
I don't, and I especially think that these days, like that might have worked at a certain time, but today I don't think it does. I think things are much more fluid now.
Yes.
People making changes.
And also we don't know, I think that choices are so much more complex than just if I do this, this happens. It's if I do this, this, like it's a whole chain of evolution. And we sometimes don't understand why the choices that we make or the actions that we take matter until years in the future. Whoa, that is and then we can kind of look back and see like, oh, that's why all that had to transpire. It was to get me here. It wasn't for that or that. It was now.
And the premise that you have at the beginning where she just wakes up, she's just gotten engaged and she has this dream and it's like, whoa, different guy, different this, different that. And it's haunting her. Like it's always there like, why did this happen? I don't know this person. I don't recognize this apartment. I don't recognize anything. And there's this date 5 years in the future. So do you think she spends the whole time sitting there wondering, or she just goes on with her life?
I think that Dani is a very categorical person, and I think she's very good at filing, which is something I'm not great at. She's very good at filing things and putting them into boxes. So I think once she kind of sorts out what she decides what this is, she just puts it in a box, closes it, and kind of forgets
moves
about
it over there. Right.
Yes.
Until
she
sits there and sees and blah, 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 blah. In the format of the dinner list, back to here, it was interesting because the characters' actions and discussions at dinner informed a lot of the story that were explained in flashbacks, and the stories revealed in two converging plot lines.
Yeah.
How tough was that to
do? That was more a more complicated book than I have written before.
Gosh, yeah.
It was not, I will say it was not, it was a similar experience to In 5 Years where it was a very organic writing process, and those sections spoke to each other very naturally. What was hard was in the editing process when I had to add some scenes, or it was nearly impossible to pick anything up and set it anywhere else because the sections are so closely wound to what's in front of and back of it. Like they're constantly talking to each other as they move forward. So the editing process on the dinner list was very tricky because it's how do I inject something but not shake up the entire ecosystem here?
What I found is that both books have surprises in them, though.
Yeah.
These little, and I'm like, wow, did not see that coming. So I can understand how it would send you in a different path, it would send you in a different direction. But at the same time, the surprises really just woke up like, wow, I did not see that this was the thing that was going to be happening.
That's my favorite compliment to hear. It's so nice because I, of course, write with the knowledge of I've known with both books what that sort of twist, for lack of a better way to say it, would be. And so it seems very obvious to me as the writer who knows everything. So it's always very nice when somebody says they didn't see it coming.
Yeah. Well, and then the end was just like, oh my gosh, scream sequel. It just seemed scream sequel. So
that's so lovely.
I will just say that. So, all right, there were 5 guests in the dinner list. There are 5 years here. Favorite number? 5?
You know, it's interesting. I've been talking a lot about this. I feel like there is actually a cultural obsession with the number 5 because when we ask that question of people, we do say, if you'd like to have dinner with any 5 people, and we say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? So I think it's less about me as it is about our sort of collective, internalization of that number. Like it's just the marker that we use. And I think it's because it's you know that saying where they say you vastly overestimate what you can do in a year, but underestimate what you can do in 5.
Okay.
I think it's sort of a period or a number of time that feels like a lot can change, but we can still maybe see it.
Right. And it seems plausible.
Yes.
It seems like it's enough time to make a change,
yes,
but it's not too much time. If you said to somebody, where are you going to be in 10 years? Whoa, that's
knows?
Like way too far.
Right.
5, I might do. But I have to tell you, I've never asked that in an interview. I have never asked somebody where they see themselves in 5 years because I've always looked back and seen all the things that I did in my life. None of them did I completely see that happened in the exact same construct that I've planned.
Absolutely nothing. I'm with you.
It's like, oh, you're going to get married by what age?
I'm with you.
But we have friends that sit there and say, this is what's going to happen. And I'm just there like, really? You really are on that kind of a time frame?
We don't know.
You don't know what's going to happen along the way. You don't know what's going to unravel things. So I have to say, 5 people you'd invite to a dinner party?
Nora Ephron, for sure.
Oh, of course.
I love her. Maybe she could cook for us.
That's exactly. That's a good one.
That would be amazing. Joan Didion, who I absolutely adore. My grandparents, Sam and Sylvia. My grandfather passed away when I was 2 years old, and my grandmother actually in the middle of writing this book. So the book is dedicated to the both of them.
Right.
And I would really very much love to have dinner with them. And I always say John Lovett of Pod Save America just because he seems so fun and really funny.
You need to have somebody like your outsider, like Audrey Hepburn at your dinner.
Yeah.
Like what you had over here. Because you need to have somebody that's completely
who's just like, I don't know what I'm doing here, but I guess I'm here.
I'm at the dinner. I don't know why I came into this dinner, but this is what I've, ended up going to do. And I think that, looking at both books, I enjoyed. I mean, they're just like fun, but they're not like, okay. A lot of times people sit there and go, this is just really light. Actually, they're both really deep. At the same time as being these quick, brisk reads, you find yourself thinking about them because you're thinking about what we ascribe to of this is the way life is going to be. And over here, how quickly things can be undone, but we don't understand what happened in the past. And here, the fact that a couple of people get into explain is a gift. That now it doesn't always happen for people.
Doesn't, no.
And who would you want to be able to give that gift from?
Yeah, exactly. And it was really interesting. We did when we did the tour for the dinner list. We went around and had like dinner parties in different cities, and like we asked that question of people, and so many people. The answers were so personal. Like I would want to have my mother there because she never got to meet my daughter. Or I'd love to have my grandparents. Like it was very personal and very familial. It wasn't. I mean, there were some like Obama or Audrey, but a lot of it was just, what I wouldn't give to have one last meal with that person.
Yeah. I've been extremely lucky. Both my parents are 90, and I realize how lucky I am that they've been at big milestones for the kids. They've been at the graduations. They've been at all these things. And I realize so many friends my age do not have that now.
Right.
And really all the things you got to share, and I didn't have that emptiness. Yeah. And as a result, okay, what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
And there's so many people that they're missing things. They're missing things that didn't connect their life together at this point. And it's really interesting. So in 5 years is a Good Morning America selection.
Yay!
So what does that involve? What does that mean?
Oh my gosh, it's been so much fun. The book has been on GMA twice now, which was so exciting. And then I also filmed the segment Surprising a Book Club with Rachel Lindsay, who's a bachelorette who's amazing, Surprising a Book Club in California. So that was really, really, really fun. And we get to have like a whole book club discussion. And I actually got to talk about the book for the first time with them. So that was really fun.
Really, really great. So do you do a lot of talking to book clubs about both books, or not the first book for Dinner List? Did you do a lot?
I have, yeah. I have done a bit. It's been really, it's just the best.
Well, I think that authors have told me that sometimes they learn things about their book that they didn't know.
Yes.
Because readers are bringing this up. Is there anything that particular from the dinner list that somebody did? Wait, I never saw that there.
I'm trying to think what it was. Well, so the dinner list opens with an art exhibit called Ashes and Snow that was at the Santa Monica Pier in 2006. And I have had a lot of people say, I went to that, but I remember like that was what was there, or this was over here, or like really specific things
right.
about. And both of my books are very specifically rooted in New York City and the details of New York City. So a lot of people love to say like, oh, I love that restaurant, or I love that coffee shop, or when I come to New York, I like to do X, Y, or Z, because they both are very detailed. Like they both have all of the places that I love in this city in them.
And when they get engaged at the beginning of this one, they're at the Rainbow Room, which is an iconic place. And someone had said, oh, well, you know, somebody who's 20-something wouldn't go there. And I was like, no, somebody who's looking like Danny is for tradition would want to go there because she would want the place to still exist later to show her children that that's where she went. And someplace super trendy would not exist.
No. And also the Rainbow Room is the place you get engaged. Right, so that's where Danny wants to go.
Spinning dance floor. And going out and dancing on the dance floor. And the ring, the exact right ring. And all these kinds of things for the moment.
Yes.
But I also love like she's waiting the whole time. Like it's going to happen. It's going to happen. I was like, oh, it's going to be on this time frame. Where is he? Why didn't he do the ring the right way? And there's a lot about things in life being right. It's like, this is the right way to do it. And I think her world gets so upended in this book that there is not a right way. I think that she goes into this a more holistically better person because I think that for what she goes through, her life changes. I just feel like, well, I'm going to I can make a change.
Yes.
Because it's been so upended.
And I think her journey is one to understand that she can change her perspective and she can embrace a different way of being. I think, listen, like no one in life is shake-upable proof, right? Like a shake-up's going to happen to all of us. And I think it's about how we move forward from there, whether we still try to grasp on to a plan or a set of beliefs or a set of outcomes that are just not happening anymore, or if we can move forward with the current of where life is taking us.
And be happy.
And be happy.
Because a lot of times people can move forward, but it's always, if only this had happened. And I think here, what you're showing is you're going to be happy in a different way.
Yes.
And there is going to be happiness. And you're not going to look back. Because I don't think when changes happen, I don't think she walks away and says, oh, this is like the worst now. It's like not what I dreamt.
Yeah. And I think that happiness is not necessarily getting what we want. It's embracing what we get.
That's good. I like that. You do something really interesting in the acknowledgments in the back of your books. And I'm going to start with this one because I'm going to have to put my glasses on, which 27-year-olds need, just so you know. And finally, to any woman who ever felt betrayed by fate or love, hang in there. This isn't the end of your story. Love that line. But what you do here is you run that line again, but you add to it. So I'm going to do this. And this just proves I do read the acknowledgments. How many of you read the acknowledgments in the back of the books? I always read these. Let's read these. I often don't understand. The other things I don't understand are the quotes that are often in the front of a book. I never understand. Like, well, sometimes I skip over those because I'm not like quite sure why they're there. And I don't understand sometimes dedications unless they're completely clear.
But the acknowledgments,
I'm seeing that I'm totally getting. So I ended the acknowledgments of my last book, The Dinner List, by saying, to any woman who has ever felt betrayed by fate or love, hang in there. This isn't the end of your story. I now want to add, even after midnight, especially after midnight, continue moving toward that which is moving toward you. Great line.
Thank you.
Really, really great line. I think that's a line that should be like on your website or something like that.
I love it.
That's your signature line.
It's something I believe.
I totally believe. And I think that it's something that should be framed. Maybe we should make little wall plaques out of that.
I love that. I love that.
A new business.
A new business.
Forget television. Wall hang. So where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Back here?
Back here? You're back here having a conversation?
Sure.
But wait a second. But we're back with a couple of more books?
I would love that.
I think we have to have the table a lot more crowded in 5 years. Let's make that a deal.
Okay,
deal. That totally works?
Sounds good.
That's all. So with that in mind, are you working on a new book?
I am, yes.
You are?
Yes.
Early stages?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're still like that 30-page like unwind kind of a thing, or a little bit further than that?
I have like a first draft. I'm laughing because like I haven't talked to my publisher about it yet.
Okay.
But it exists.
That's good.
It exists.
That's good. They will be happy to know it exists.
Yeah.
Because everything is shapeable as long as it exists. It's
True.
far worse when it's I have no idea what I'm going to do next, and I'm in a panic. This is good.
Yes.
First draft is a good thing.
Well, like we said, just keep moving forward.
Just keep going forward. Well, I would love to see lots more books on this table so that we can continue to have conversations. We met for the first time in person last year in Tucson.
Yeah.
At the Tucson Festival of Books. We just had this one of like real quick
I
connection
know. It was fun,
conversation.
though.
It was like 2 minutes of let's say hi and get on the same page. Thoroughly enjoyed the book. Looking forward to so much more success for you. And also, I have to say, I could see this as a movie, and I could see it as real. Yeah, I'm thinking my love. We'll see what happens.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Thanks so much for joining us today. Until everybody else, next time for our next Book Reporter Talks To interview.